They say that dolls make excellent companions for children, but what happens when they're possessed by demonic forces? Today, we'll delve into chilling tales of cursed dolls, their eerie origins, and the sinister presences that some believe lurk within them. Our first story is about an antique doll donated to a museum that later began to display terrifying behavior. But before we begin, make sure to stay updated with all the spine-chilling details. In September 2024, life-sized Victorian-era doll made of porcelain and dressed in antique clothing was donated to the local museum in Oakwood Village, Ohio. The doll, which dates back to the late 19th century, was placed in a glass case in the museum's main hall. The donor chose to remain anonymous, and no further information about the doll's origin or previous owners was provided. A few days after the doll's arrival, strange things started happening. Museum staff and visitors reported that the doll's eyes seemed to follow them around the room. Some even claimed to have seen the doll move on its own, with its head turning and its arms flailing. At first, these accounts were dismissed as mere superstition or misinterpretations. After all, how could an inanimate object come to life? However, the strange occurrences continued and became more frequent. One evening, a security guard was patrolling the nearly empty museum when he noticed something truly terrifying. The doll's head had turned slowly toward him as if it were alive. Startled, he reported the incident to his supervisor, who in turn contacted the police. As news of the moving doll spread, people from all over the country began showing up at the museum, hoping to catch a glimpse of the phenomenon for themselves. But the doll's movements were erratic, and it only seemed to turn its head when no one was looking. Visitors were left wondering if they were truly witnessing a supernatural event, or if there was a more rational explanation behind the doll's behavior. Determined to uncover the truth, researchers delved into the doll's history. They discovered that the doll had once belonged to a woman named Helen, who lived in a large mansion on the outskirts of town. Helen was known to practice dark rituals and had a reputation for being a bit of a recluse. According to legend, she kept several cursed dolls in her home, each representing a different aspect of her dark magic. When Helen passed away, her estate was put up for auction and the dolls were sold to various collectors. One of the dolls ended up in the possession of a man who donated it to the museum in hopes that it would find a new home where it could be appreciated for its age and craftsmanship. However, he failed to mention the doll's dark history to the museum staff. As the researchers continued their investigation, they uncovered more disturbing details about the doll's origins. It was rumored that Helen had used the doll in her rituals, and some believed that the doll was actually possessed by a demon. As the team delved deeper into the mystery, they realized that they might have stumbled upon something truly sinister. Could this antique doll really be cursed? And if so, what kind of danger might it pose to those who come into contact with it? As the story unfolds, we'll continue to explore the terrifying truth behind the doll and the dark secrets it holds. Our next story takes us to New York City, where a young woman named Lucy inherited a creepy doll from her grandmother. The doll, which was made of porcelain and had a blank stare, had been passed down through generations and was said to be cursed. Lucy, who was skeptical of such claims, decided to keep the doll in her apartment. However, soon after she brought the doll home, strange things started happening. She began having nightmares of a woman in a Victorian nightgown who would stare at her with lifeless eyes. The dreams were so vivid that Lucy started questioning her sanity. Determined to put an end to her disturbing dreams, Lucy took the doll to a local antique shop where she learned that it had belonged to a woman named Elizabeth, who had died under mysterious circumstances. The antique shop owner also told her that the doll was rumored to be cursed and that Elizabeth had used it in dark rituals. As Lucy listened to the tale, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Could this doll really be responsible for her disturbing dreams? Or was there another explanation behind Elizabeth's death and the doll's dark reputation? Determined to uncover the truth, Lucy delved into the doll's history. She visited Elizabeth's former home and spoke to the locals who remembered her as a strange and secretive woman. Through her research, Lucy learned that Elizabeth had been accused of witchcraft and had been ostracized by the community. As she pieced together Elizabeth's story, Lucy discovered that the doll had been at the center of it all. The locals believed that Elizabeth had used the doll to perform her rituals, and that the doll was somehow responsible for her demise. With each passing day, Lucy became more convinced that the doll was cursed. She began experiencing strange phenomena in her apartment, such as flickering lights and objects moving on their own. She could have sworn that she heard whispers coming from the doll, and that its blank stare seemed to follow her around the room. Terrified, Lucy decided to get rid of the doll. She took it back to the antique shop and begged the owner to help her break the curse. The antique shop owner, who was sympathetic to Lucy's plight, agreed to help her. Together, they performed a ritual designed to cleanse the doll of any evil spirits that may have possessed it. But as they performed the ritual, the doll's stare seemed to intensify, and a cold wind swept through the room. The antique shop owner, shaken by the sudden change in atmosphere, quickly finished the ritual and sent Lucy on her way. Lucy, relieved to have the doll out of her apartment, donated it to a local charity shop. However, she couldn't shake the feeling that the doll's curse would continue to follow her. Our final story brings us to London, where a young boy named Billy received a wooden doll from his grandmother. The doll, which had a carved face and wore a tattered dress, had been passed down through generations and was said to be haunted by the spirit of a young girl who had died in the early 1900s. Billy, who didn't believe in ghosts, decided to keep the doll in his bedroom. However, soon after he brought the doll home, strange things started happening. He began hearing footsteps in the hallway outside his room and felt a cold presence in the room with him. Determined to put an end to the spooky occurrences, Billy took the doll to a local antique shop where he learned that it had belonged to a young girl named Mary who had died of a mysterious illness. The antique shop owner also told him that the doll was rumored to be haunted and that Mary's spirit was trapped inside it. As Billy listened to the tale, he couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. Could this doll really be harboring a restless spirit? Or was there another explanation behind Mary's death and the doll's eerie reputation? Desperate to free the spirit, Billy decided to return the doll to Mary's family home. He tracked down the house's current owner and asked if he could perform a two-contact Mary's spirit. The homeowner, who was initially skeptical, agreed to let Billy perform the ritual. Billy placed the doll on a table and began asking questions. Suddenly, the room grew cold and the air crackled with energy. Billy could have sworn that he heard a whisper coming from the doll. As the night wore on, Billy became more convinced that the doll was haunted. He experienced strange phenomena, such as objects moving on their own and disembodied voices echoing through the house. Terrified, Billy fled the house and never looked back. To this day, the doll remains in the house, and some believe that Mary's spirit is still trapped inside it. So, did these terrifying stories leave you spellbound? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more spine-chilling tales.